Continuing on with part 2 of this episode, what I want to first highlight is the fact that I did rename all my layers and kind of group them to its corresponding section. So you can see I have this small highlight, a headline top, headline bottom, navigation, main bottom. Then you have the description, the background dim, and the background image. I didn't rename it, but I probably should. Now, it is very important to go ahead and rename those so that we know exactly what is being animated. And in Invision Studio, the way animations work is that they do use that artboard method similar to Adobe XD. So whatever you have on one artboard needs to be the exact same on another artboard. That way, the program itself can know what layer exactly is being animated. If that doesn't make any sense, as we continue on this episode, I will continue to explain how that kind of works. But it does use that artboard method from having an initial state and an end state, except with Invision Studio, there is a timeline that we could play with, which makes it really cool. Now, after we've renamed our layers, what we want to do is add a mask to our Experience Your and Next chapter. I did kind of hinted in the previous episode where we designed this, but the reason why we want to mask these two layers is when it comes to revealing the text layers, they do reveal from left to right, and it is not possible to do so unless we mask it. So the way it worked is it had a 0 width and it went out fully to its full width. Let's go ahead and undo that. So the way you want to mask these two layers is very simple. Go ahead and select the drop-down menu over here and add a rectangle tool. With the rectangle tool, you want to go ahead and match the width and the height of the text layer. Go ahead and add the rectangle tool into the group that we created. And you want to select both of these items, right click, and mask. Now what this will do is mask these two layers, and it would allow the Experience Your to be kind of contained within our rectangle that we created. So if we select our rectangle and turn off the fill, and if we mess with the width, it wouldn't necessarily mess up the text itself, but it would just kind of have that nice reveal effect that we want. So when the animation starts, we do have this rectangle that goes from a 0 width to the text width, and it kind of has that reveal animation that we want. So let's go ahead and undo that. And we want to do the same thing for the next chapter. So go ahead and select the drop down, select the rectangle tool, make it the same width and height of that text layer. Select headline bottom, add it to its group, select both, mask them, and then let's select the masked rectangle, turn off the fill, and if we mess around with the width, we could see that we could have that nice reveal. Let's undo that. So once we have that settled, what we want to do is duplicate this artboard. Go ahead and select the artboard itself, Control-C, Control-V. That will duplicate our artboards. So what we want to do now is have our initial artboard and our end artboard. So honestly, everything here would kind of be empty and hidden. And then we want things to animate from artboard 2 to artboard 3. So to do that, what we want to do is select artboard 2, select this little bolt icon, and this will add interactions. So you'll have this little line that kind of directs you where you want it to go. So go ahead and select that to artboard 3. And it'll give you this little drop down, or not drop down, sorry. It'll give you this little modal. And what we want to do here is in the trigger, we want to select timer. And we want to set a timeout. For now, we could just leave it 0.2. It's not really a big deal. But what timeout is kind of a certain duration before the animation starts. So go ahead and have it at 0.2. It'll navigate to artboard 3. We want to maintain the scroll position. And for transition, we want to go ahead and select motion. Now we'll edit timeline later on, but for now we want to add these animations and then edit the timeline. Go ahead and hit save. And if we play it, nothing should happen because there is no animations happening. But what you could see is if we select artboard 2, we have that 0.2 delay or timeout, and then it'll start. So it jumps to artboard 3 rather quickly. Now, the first animation that we did have in our project was the fact that the background image did zoom out. So if we select artboard 2's background image and blow it up a bit, and if we go ahead and play, we can see that is the first animation that happens. If we replay that, and I'm replaying it just by hitting the back arrow key, which goes back to artboard 2, you can see that it does zoom out. the first thing I do want to do is add the correct easing. So I am jumping a little forward here, but if we go into artboard 2 and edit timeline, I'll discuss the screen in the later steps, but in the easing, we can do global easing. And the easing that we do want to set is a cubic Bezier, which is 0.6, 0.02, 0.05, and 0.09, or sorry, 0.9. Go ahead and enter that. And if we play it, let's play it again. Cool. Let's hit done. So if we play, we have a nicer easing than just a linear one. Let's go ahead and do the rest of the animations. Now for the navigation, it comes from the top and fades in. So what we need to do is just push this up a bit. So what should happen is the background should zoom out and our navigation should come down and fade in if we hit the play button and see. Perfect. They both did it at the same time. Again, we'll handle the timeline animation later on. So in the enhanced your, what we want to do is edit the mask layer. But first I want to see something. When I select the text layer, the text is centered, but what I want it to do is I want it to be left aligned. So go ahead and choose that. And if we select the mask layer, what we're going to do is only the mask layer. Don't touch the experience UR, but just drop this down to a width of 0. And do the same thing for the next chapter. Left align it and drop down the mask layer to a width of 0. Now if we play it, it should give us a nice animation of the width revealing from 0 to its full width of the text. Let's go ahead and replay that. Perfect. And so animating in Invision Studio is extremely easy. It's got this whole Adobe XD's auto animate style of animating, but the cool thing is it does come with timelines. So the next thing was the fact that the find out more comes up a little, and I believe it's only the find out more, not the bottom border. The bottom border, what it did was it faded in and it went from a width of 0 to 100. So we could set the width of this to 0, and that should be its far left. And to find out more, we have it just pushing up and lowering the opacity and fading in as well. So let's go ahead and play that. We'll play it again one more time. Perfect. Now the description did the exact same thing as a find out more. It fades in and it goes up in the y-axis. So go ahead and drop it down and lower the opacity. And similar to future self and these little, this pen tool and the circle, we could, if you want, you could just lower the opacity of the group, but we have it to where it's kind of delayed. So your self fades in and then the line that we created and the ellipse fade in right after. So it kind of has this little delay effect. So we want to lower the opacity on each item. Go ahead and lower path and ellipse as well. Great. So we've completely hid everything on the screen. And if we play it, everything should animate, but it's going to be very unorganized since everything is going to be animating all at once with the same duration. Now, what we want to do is jump into the timeline. So select artboard 2, hit edit timeline, and let's zoom out. Now, the layout of the timeline might look like this initially, but what you could do is select the top right and hit the other option, which will dock the timeline to the bottom, which I certainly prefer. Now, the way that I like to do things is I like to start with whatever animation comes in first and let that play first and move everything else a few seconds after. So what we did have was that background zooming in or zooming out, sorry. And so what we want to do is select description and everything else and just push it back a bit. We'll push it back to 1 second so that it can give us more time to view everything. So if we play it, background zooms out, everything else comes into play, but it isn't really all that long, or it doesn't take that long. We kind of want it to start at 0.6. So let's leave it at 0.6. And a lot of this is just kind of guesswork. And it's very repetitive on finding that exact sweet spot of when things animate. So we'll leave it at 0.6. If we go ahead and play it one more time. Cool. I think we could do 0.5, honestly. Cool. Now the next, or the actual first thing that's really important for the user to see is the experience your next chapter. So if we go ahead and select those on the screen, let's go ahead and unselect all of them. If we select experience your, you can see that it will direct us to the actual item on the timeline. So we can move everything back a bit, except that headline. And if we move this to 0.7, or we can move these to 1 second actually, push them back further. And I know that the next chapter, I just want a small delay after when the headline top plays. So headline top will play. And then I want the headline bottom just to follow that. So I'll put it to 0.7. Cool. Let's play that. Okay. I think that it's a little too slow. So let's do 0.6. So one will start at 0.5 and the other will start at 0.6. Let's go ahead and play that one more time. Cool. So there's just that tiny delay for the experience URL to come in first. Now, the next thing that we want is the discover, which is a logo, and the navigation items to slowly fade in as the animation continues. And so what we want to do for that is if we select the entire navigation, we can give it a longer duration by just dragging the endpoint, and we'll set that to 1.5 and we will let that play at 0.8. So this will take longer than everything else to load in, and we just want it to fade in without the user ever recognizing. So it just kind of comes in without having this dramatic entrance. For the next items, we do want to find out more and the description just to come in. We'll want to find out more to come in before the description. So if we select find out more, we'll leave this at 0.8. And the description, we'll leave it at 1. And the your future self, we select all of them, we'll push this back to 1.2. And then there was that delay. So we want your future self to show more. Then we want the line to be drawn, which is at 1.3, or to fade in. And then we want the ellipse to fade in last, so at 1.4. All right. So if we play this in the beginning. Perfect. So you could see the background starting without any delays. Then at 0.5, the headline top comes in and the headline bottom follows, followed by the navigation, which slowly comes in. And I think we could push this back to the very furthest back, so 1.6. And sorry, the navigation comes in right after, along with the main button fading in and that line being drawn. Next is the description that just slowly pushes up and fades in, followed by the small highlight, which has this sort of domino effect of one happening following the others. Now, if we select done and we preview artboard 2, we could go ahead and replay it by hitting the back arrow, jumping back to artboard 2. Great. Now, you can always jump back and take a lot more time to know where you want each animation to come in and how long a duration should. I did this a lot faster than usual for the sake of this tutorial, but all in all, everyone has their own preference. And for easing as well, I was pretty lazy and I set a global easing for each item. If you wanted to set specific easing for each individual item, what you could do is just hit the easing button and add a custom easing. Also, you could select their presets that they have, such as ease in, ease out, pop, and linear. The cool thing about Invision Studio is that they also let you play with this sort of easing curve or ease curve. And that's really cool. I understand that, or I know in Adobe XD, they kind of just give you these presets and you're very limited. But that is all for animating in Invision Studio. It is very easy and very visual to do. The timeline isn't really much of a constraint compared to other prototyping tools that have a lot of these keyframes that you need to set. This is very easy. It's very visual with the artboard animation setup that they have, but they also give you a timeline, so you don't need to create hundreds of artboards to simply have an animation kind of just flow in. If you've enjoyed this video, I ask you to leave a like. That would truly help me out. And if you want more videos like this, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. This does it for this episode. Our next video should be out in a few days. And if you hit that notification bell, it will definitely tell you when that's out. Thanks again for watching this video. Have a wonderful day.